Nick Diaz's long 18-month suspension officially expired yesterday, and he had a couple of appearances that, let's just say, they were a little different. One, he was a little bit more polished, a little bit more reserved, and then the other one, he laid down the law, according to Nick Diaz, where he was basically stating he will fight when he wants to fight, and no one's going to tell him what to do. So we'll look at the first video, which was on ESPN, when they were asking him about his suspension and about his thoughts on it. So take a look at this one, and then we'll look at the one from TMZ, and then we'll come back and discuss.
Well, Brett Okamoto here with UFC welterweight Nick Diaz, and it's a special day for Nick Diaz. It's August 1st. That is the end of an 18-month suspension given to him by the Nevada State Athletic Commission due to a positive test for marijuana in 2015. So, Nick, thank you so much for joining us. You know, this is a day that a lot of people, a lot of your fans have looked forward to. Is this a day that you have looked forward to? Were you aware? You know, were you counting down the days? Was this circled on the calendar? August 1st, your suspension would be over.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, man, just get right back to it, get punched and kicked and all that good stuff. That's just, it's gonna be a bloodbath.
You know, I want to look forward and I want to get to your next fight, but real quickly, just on the suspension, did you feel like that you were robbed of a year and a half of your career, or do you think that, you know, I broke a rule and so I did have to serve some kind of punishment? What did you think about just the 18-month suspension that you just served? Was it justice, or was it unfair to you? Did it rob you of a part of your career?
Sure, there's ups and downs with that, you know, being suspended. For instance, like, you know, people don't understand I've had 37 fights, 3 to 5 fights a year for 17 years. Now that does something to somebody. So on account of these suspensions, they've only been my only vacations I've ever had.
The first point I wanted to state on this is that I'm with him on the point of him being a warrior and a veteran in the octagon. The guy rarely says no to a fight. Both Diaz brothers, underappreciated in the UFC, but more often than not, they will take the fight, and they save Dana White a lot of headaches in terms of trying to organize who can step in, because both of those guys, as you know, are veterans of the sport, and they will take the fights. He's had 37 fights, as he said, 3 to 5 fights a year for 17 years. I mean, I'm looking back here. He fought in UFC 47 in April 2004 when he beat Lawler with a knockout. That kind of rivalry started back then, and fans have been wanting them to see a rematch since then. So Nick Diaz is right with his words. I have vocalized my opinion on him as a person when it comes to the rules. He doesn't respect those rules that are laid out for him, and therefore he has to be punished. And that's why I never really batted an eyelid at the 18-month suspension when other people were calling it crazy. Yeah, it's crazy, but the rules are in place to be abided by. So he had to obviously understand that there was going to be punishment. But the guy has taken a severe beating through his career, so if he needs to smoke some weed to ease the pain, who's going to sit there and say that he shouldn't? But whilst it still remains a forbidden rule in the UFC, you have to kind of eat the consequences of that. But we go to the next video, right? So he's a little bit more reserved than this one, a little bit more polished, not the usual Diaz antics as you see. And then it goes to the TMZ one, where it's a little bit more unfiltered, a little bit more TYT Sports-esque, would I say, if I had him in here in the studio, which I'd love to, by the way, if you're watching at some point, Nick or Nick Diaz. Either way, take a look at this one and then we'll discuss.
If you could make the perfect fight, give me a name of a fighter who you want to fight.
I want to fight the best guy. I want to fight the best guy. You know what? I always want to fight the best guy, but the thing is I'm on top. I'm the one on top. They're dropping my name. I don't need no fake ass piece of plastic. Fuck that. I can fight, and we could catch weight too. Everybody wants to do a fight with me. Champions at 170, champions at 185. I said we can meet halfway. I don't know nobody nothing. I made pay-per-view without a title. I don't need that fake ass plastic to
Will you
beat somebody
fight, and will you beat Tyron Woodley if you step in the octagon with him?
What's that?
I said if Tyron Woodley wants to fight, will you take that fight, and will you...
Hey, all I'm saying is I've seen all his fights, and I don't do the things that he does because I don't do those things in training. So we'll see how that works out, if that's what has to be. But
is there any chance, Nick, my last question, is there any chance that you go on that 202 card and fight?
What?
Is there any chance you are on that UFC 202 card and fight? I know it's only...
If they make me an offer, I can't refuse, but I doubt that's going to happen. I'm over here. Look at me right now. I don't need nothing. I don't owe nobody nothing.
So, I mean, it's mouth-watering to have both Diaz brothers potentially on the card. I mean, UFC 202 is one that I've been looking forward to for a while. You guys know this. And whether they add Nick Diaz to that card, I'm still going to tune in, but I would be more inclined to watch the full card. I will be there to watch the full card, but when you have both Diaz brothers, two warriors, two fighters who, no matter what you say about them outside the octagon, they will provide entertainment within that area. And I think that, to be fair, I have to give him some credit when anyone who comes back from an 18-month suspension could be clawing their way to try and get back into a fight, could be clawing their way to get back in and look to start making that money again. But the Diaz brothers are very firm in their opinions, and you got to give them credit for it. They stand by their own beliefs. Nick Diaz believes that he doesn't need the UFC in order to continue along his life. He is quoted, and I state here, that he said, why would I want to go in there and fight with somebody, get my face punched in and kicked, and it's not my idea of a good time. So, yeah, if they offer him money, these guys are in there to make their money. And I will never, ever criticize anyone for trying to make the money in their sport, especially when it's such a grueling sport, such a barbaric sport that you are getting kicked and punched to make money. I will never criticize them for wanting to make the most money they can whilst they're in the octagon, because it is obviously very draining to go in there consistently. And Nick Diaz has done it for 17 plus years. So he doesn't owe the UFC anything. He doesn't owe them to go back in there and say, all right, I'm going to come back in and take a big fight. However, the fans do want to see it. I would love to see him fight Tyron Woodley. I'm not going to dive into details and figure out what I think Nick Diaz meant when he stated that Tyron Woodley doesn't do the things that he does. Nick Diaz, I think, similar to Nate Diaz, both the brothers don't adjust their usual fighting style for their opponents. They go in there and fight their fight, and it's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be entertaining to watch. And more often than not, as you see with their records, they come out on top. It's not always the most technically enjoyable fights, but they put on a show, and they are talented as they are warriors. So they are, I think, the worst nightmare for most fighters, because they are unpredictable to go in there. I would love to see that fight after what I've seen from Tyron Woodley and his performance against Lawler and that emphatic first-round knockout. I think it would be a perfect card for UFC fans around the world to come in and see a veteran of the sport coming back from suspension and taking on someone who has just proved that they're a worthy winner and taking down another veteran of the sport and Robbie Lawler. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. Would you like to see Nick Diaz on UFC 202? Do you think it would be phenomenal to have a Diaz duo stacked on UFC 202? Hit me on Twitter, Francis_Maxwell. Don't actually hit me. Just hit me up on Twitter. And I'll see you guys very soon on TWO Sport.